Look at this gorgeous loaf of super easy, simple sourdough bread. This is my beginner sourdough. I honestly think you're going to love it. Follow along to see how you can make this really easy if you're a beginner. This is where you want to start. Start here with this recipe. Start with my website, amybakesbread.com. You can make sourdough from scratch, just a few simple ingredients, and I'm going to show you how to do it. We're gonna make my beginner sourdough bread. This is the sourdough bread recipe that I recommend you begin with if you are a brand new beginner to sourdough. To start this bread, we want a ripe, healthy, active sourdough starter. And to do that, I like to give a nice feeding to my starter. And this recipe, I actually even sometimes use the levain method. Don't let that confuse you. You can just sub active sourdough starter for it, but it's basically just an extra power feed for your sourdough starter that you use all up in one bake. If you want more information about that, go to my free sourdough guides. You're gonna get all that information for free, but I'm just gonna show you how I mix up my starter so that it's gonna be healthy and active, ready to go in probably about 3.5 to 4 hours for me to mix up my beginner sourdough. So I have here about 80 grams of sourdough starter I've already put into my jar, and I'm going to add 80 grams of water. And then I'm gonna add 80 grams of flour. You tear your scale in between. I went a little bit over, so I'm gonna add a little more water to make up for that. I just want to make sure that I'm doing equal weights of flour and water. And then I'm gonna mix this up. You're gonna end up with like a thick, kind of a paste looking dough here. And then we're gonna cover it and set it in a warm place. And it's going to go from this, fresh smelling, floury mixture to being full of bubbles, doubling in size, being active and ready for us to use in this sourdough recipe. So you can see what it looks like now. We'll come back in about 3 to 4 hours. It's gonna be all bubbly and ready to mix up our beginner sourdough. Make sure you cover it. You can use plastic wrap. I love this starter jar. You can actually find it. I'll link it in the notes. I love this jar for my sourdough. And it's easy for me to see because it's clear. It holds a good amount because I like to bake with it a lot. We're gonna check it out in a few hours. One more thing, you want to keep it warm. So it will be ready in about 3 to 4 hours if I'm keeping it around 78 to 80 degrees. If it's colder, it's going to take longer for that to happen. If it's warmer, it's going to go faster. This bubbly, active, ripe sourdough starter. It's doubled in size. It's ready to be used in this recipe. So we're going to start by putting our bowl on the scale. All right. I tear my scale so it's at 0 and I'm using grams. I'm just gonna make sure I'm in grams. I like to use a scale because it just makes it much more accurate, though you can use cups if you really want to. But if you're a beginner, I highly, highly recommend a scale to start with. We're gonna put all of this starter, well, not all of it, a lot of the starter, 230 grams of it into this bowl. If you go a little bit over, that's okay. Or you can just take a little bit out. Okay, now a lot of people say, okay, I've put my active starter in here. What do I do with what is left here? So now your sourdough starter, you can feed this. I'm gonna feed this fresh flour and water. I'm gonna let it rise again, and then I'm gonna stick it in my fridge until I wanna use it again. Or if I had a lot left over in my jar, I may use some of it as discard and use it in a discard recipe. Or I could make another loaf of bread if I had enough. But regardless, you want to make sure you always keep a little bit extra here so that you can feed it. Keep it in your fridge, and then you'll have starter forever.
That's one of the things that I love about sourdough starter. If you keep it and maintain it, and I have a guide about that. if you need information about how to maintain your starter, how to keep it in the fridge, all of those things, you can find all of that on my website at amybakesbread.com. But go ahead and make sure that you always have a little bit left over so that you can feed it, maintain it. You'll always have yeast ready to go in your kitchen. Okay, I'm gonna feed that a little bit later because we're gonna work on our bread right now. I have my starter in the bowl. I'm gonna tare my scale, which makes it go back to 0. And we're gonna add in our water. This is 400 grams of water. Okay, adding water is a really important step actually of making the sourdough bread because the temperature of your water is going to really affect the temperature of your dough. If you use a warmer water, your dough is gonna start out warmer. If you use a colder water, your dough is going to be colder. And you want to really try to keep your sourdough in this optimal temperature of 76 to 80 degrees. That's where it's gonna work the best, the wild yeast and the bacteria together to raise your bread. If your dough is colder, it's gonna take longer, and if it's warmer, it's gonna go faster. I know I talk about this a lot, but really temperature, if you can understand temperature, it's one of the huge keys to sourdough success, in my opinion. You can find more all about temperature on my website. But I also want you to notice how this starter is kind of floating a little bit in my water. That sometimes people call it the float test. All that it means is that your starter will be able to raise your bread dough because of, see all those little bubbles, all those CO2 bubbles in there? That's what it is. It's not always accurate though, so take it with a grain of salt, literally. And it's just like a little extra check that I do when I'm mixing up my dough. Okay, sometimes I mix that with my hands, and sometimes I use my dough whisk. I'm just getting all of that mixed together. Next up, we're gonna add in our salt. We want 12 grams of salt. I just use regular table salt. Add this in. And then we're going to add in our flour. I tare the scale again. We're gonna do 600 grams of flour. I'm using a bread flour. That is all that we have to add to this dough. So we're gonna go ahead and mix it up here. Now, if you wanted to use an all-purpose flour, you could use an all-purpose flour. The dough may be a little bit more sticky, so you may want to reduce your water just a little bit. But really, we're just looking for a nice, shaggy dough here. This is all that we're doing in this first step is just mixing these things together. This is literally how easy sourdough bread is, or that it can be. That's why I recommend this as a beginner recipe. It's a little bit sticky, but it's not super sticky, and it will make you a really nice flavored loaf of bread. So I just get the dough off of my dough whisk. I'm gonna give it couple more turns by hand here. When the flour and the water meet, that is what starts the gluten formation. And so we just are very gently helping it along just through mixing it together. And we're gonna use a few gentle folds to help develop that gluten a little bit more. I'm gonna cover up this dough, set it in a warm place to rise. Actually, it's not even gonna rise, it's just gonna rest. I do also like to check the temperature of my dough, and right now it's at 77 degrees. So I know this is gonna follow a pretty normal timeline. I have all baking timelines in my recipe card based on the temperature of your dough. I know it's gonna follow a pretty basic timeline if I'm keeping my dough at that temperature. It's been about an hour. We're gonna do our first set of stretch and fold. So I take the plastic off, and you can see what this dough is looking like. I like to get my hands wet, just a little bit damp like this. It makes it easier touching the dough, so it's not gonna stick as much to my fingers. So we're just gonna do some stretch and folds. You reach down into the bottom of the dough, pull it up, stretch it up, fold it over. Turn the bowl, pull the dough up, stretch it over,
turn the bowl, hold the dough up, stretch it over, and another one. I usually do about 4 of them going around in the circle, maybe add another 1 or 2. You want your dough to just be right there in the center, kind of forms a circle. And that is your dough telling you, all right, I don't need to stretch anymore. You don't want it to get any holes in it while you're stretching or anything like that. So that's all you do for a stretch and fold. We're gonna cover it up and do another set of these in about an hour. Oh, I do like to take the temperature as well. So I'm just gonna temp this, and it's at 71. So I need to put this in a warmer place, or else this is gonna take a lot longer for my dough to rise. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick it in a warm spot, maybe my oven with the light turned on, or a bread proofer, or if I'm running my dishwasher, I'm gonna stick it on top of my warm dishwasher. So it's been about another hour, and we're gonna come in and do our next set of stretch and folds. So we reach down, pull up and over, turn the bowl, up and over, up and over, and we'll do one last set here, up and over. Now, you could add more stretch and folds if you want to this. If you forget stretch and folds, just do them when you remember. It's not that big of a deal, but that's round 2. We're gonna continue to keep this warm, and then we will do round 3 in another hour. I have been keeping my dough warm on this warming mat. I really love this one. I'll link it as well in the caption. I also have this bread proofer, but there's dough in it right now, so I am using this dough mat as well for this loaf. Both of these are great to keep your dough warm, especially in the winter time. Okay, my last set of folds. Look at how beautiful and silky this dough is feeling and looking. Just keep going around, stretch and fold. Okay, after this, we're going to let it rest for another couple of hours before we stick this dough in the fridge. We're not shaping the dough before it goes in the fridge. We're just looking for it to rise a little bit before we stick it in the fridge. So here's what it looks like now. We're gonna come back and I'm gonna show you when it's ready to rise. I do also like to take the temperature because it is a good guide for me. So it's at 75. So I'm gonna keep this a little bit warmer to help bump the temperature up to get it going a little bit more. Here we go. Look at that dough. It has domed up, it's risen, it's basically not quite doubled, but probably, I don't know, 50% rise or so. It's a little bit bubbly. See, there's like a bubble here on the side there. That's what you're looking for. Now we're gonna just go ahead and stick this dough straight into the fridge where it's going to cold ferment, which just means it's gonna slow down the fermentation, but it adds a bunch of flavor. And we're gonna shape this up and bake it tomorrow morning. Into the fridge it goes. We'll see you in the morning. I just pulled my dough out of the fridge. It's the morning. Here it is. I'm gonna go ahead and get out a piece of parchment paper. I've got my parchment paper, I've got my dough, pulled it out of the fridge, and I'm just going around with my hand. I like to kind of go around the bowl, release the dough from the edges. It's cold, so it's pretty easy to work with. And then we just pull it up, put it onto my countertop, and we're going to continue to just turn it into a gentle ball. So we go around. If a bubble like this pops up, I just kind of break it. Okay, the dough is cold. We're really not doing much other than just turning it. The cold dough helps make it easy to do this. Okay, we've got this nice round shape, and we're gonna put it right onto our parchment paper. And we're gonna let it sit here and rest while I preheat my Dutch oven. At this point, sometimes I'll even put a bowl over it like this if I want to, let it rest for a little bit longer, if I wanted to let it rise a little more, but it's done most of the rising already in the bowl and through the fermentation. If your dough doesn't feel like it's puffed up at all in the bowl overnight,
Definitely give it some time to rest a little bit, maybe an hour or two like this. But if you've done the fermentation, it's risen and everything in the bowl, you've seen that it's, done 50% rise or so before you put it in the fridge, you should be okay to just shape it and stick it on your parchment. We're gonna preheat our Dutch oven. Then we're gonna do a little bit of a slash scoring, stick it in our Dutch oven and bake it up. Okay, this dough is, it's relaxed out a little bit, but it's still got that nice shape. And I'm just gonna take a sharp knife and score it. This is not a loaf that is meant for intricate scoring at all. It's just a quick little score so that the steam has somewhere to go in this loaf. It will burst here. That's the goal of the score for this one, where I'm gonna stick it in my preheated Dutch oven. We're gonna bake it for about 25 minutes with the lid on and then 20 minutes with the lid off. It's been 25 minutes. We're gonna take the lid off of our beautiful loaf. Okay, look at this loaf. I'm gonna just check the middle to make sure that it's baked through. I want it to be about 200, so this needs a little bit longer. Anywhere really 205-ish is what I'm looking for. So I'm gonna let this bake a little bit longer. All right, we're gonna check it again. Oh yeah, there we go. 207. Looking good. Out of the oven. Look at that easy sourdough loaf. We're gonna let it cool. I'm gonna move it to that wire rack over here. We're gonna let it cool and then I will slice it open.
It's all done. So crispy and crunchy. This is a really nice loaf of sourdough bread. I mean, I don't really recommend cutting into it warm because the crumb needs to set, but sometimes I just can't resist. So I'm gonna snag a little corner for myself. Oh, look at that. It is so soft. Just a beautiful loaf of sourdough. I gotta have a little bit of butter with that warm bread. Oh my goodness. This is really one of my favorite things to eat. My kids love it. They gobble it up. I think you're gonna love it too. Ooh. If you haven't made sourdough yet, you gotta come join us. It is so good. This is delicious.